2023 has been an absolute roller coaster of a year for the video games industry. A year of seismic change, shifts, and pivots for the industry at large, monumental acquisitions that could shake the very foundation of the landscape for years to come, as well as a plethora of amazing game releases, patches, updates, expansions, games coming back from the dead and showcasing the talent that they've had since the very beginning but failed to manifest on launch, as well as a plethora, a smorgasbord of things that leave a sour taste in the mouth. 2023 has been one of the biggest and most monumental years for the video games industry. And with that comes the good and the bad. So today, I want to talk about 2023, my own experiences with gaming this year, as well as just what has happened in 2023. And tomorrow, for the next video, we'll look ahead to 2024. So let's start off with the negatives, because I think there was a lot of good this year, and I want to spend most of the video focusing in on that good, but the bad, those cons, deserve to be brought up and recognized. There have been a ton of layoffs this year across the video game sector. It is not that surprising. Corporations and businesses will be corporations and businesses. But for those who are affected, and all the talent that was lost, that sucks not only for them, but for the industry as a whole. And we have seen particular studios come under hot water in regards to these acquisitions. Bungie being one of the major ones, but it's by no means the only one out there. But Bungie in regards gathered a lot of controversy in terms of just how many layoffs they did and who they laid off. Laying off Michael Salvatore, no matter the reason, will never look good or reflect well on you because of the legacy Michael Salvatore has developed in the hearts and minds of video gamers with his previous work. Call of Duty did its Call of Duty thing and released a game this year, despite the fact that they were initially not going to have a Call of Duty this year, but Modern Warfare 3 came out and became one of, if not the least favorably reviewed Call of Duty in the franchise. It still has its fan base and its ardent defenders and supporters, but it seems like public sentiment is really starting to sour on Call of Duty as a whole. Not enough to really make it so Call of Duty loses its pedestal or anything like that, but this is sentiment that can develop over time. Modern Warfare 3 was not received well, neither by me or by a lot of other people, due to repackaging content and just feeling rushed on the whole across the board. And while there's a few trends in Modern Warfare 3 that I think are positive for Call of Duty moving forward, they don't outweigh the negatives and the cons. Hell, Call of Duty even became a laughingstock in the industry. And while some people really, in my opinion, jumped the gun on Christopher Judge's very, very benign joke at the Game Awards, it is also a symptom of common sentiment in regards to Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3. A stain and an eternal blemish on a once proud and decorated and honored series in gaming. You also have information about the console wars that have sparked up within this year. You've had PlayStation Plus raising its price and giving the player little in return for that. And over on the Xbox camp, you've had disastrous releases like Starfield and Redfall. While Redfall is by far and away the most disastrous release, Starfield's sentiment and just overall appeal has diminished greatly since its announcement to its eventual release and to where we are right now. It has its fan base, it's a Bethesda game after all, but it seems like history will not look kindly upon Starfield, and for a game that had so much potential and so much fanfare surrounding it and going into its launch, the game releasing in the state that it has, as well as the response by Bethesda since, has been lackluster and disappointing to say the least. The continued decay of Activision Blizzard in terms of their quality of games being put out, Diablo 4 and the state that game was in on launch, and all the controversy that has swept up around Diablo 4 recently in regards to its expansion pass and player surveys. There's been a lot of negative stories coming out of gaming within 2023, but it's also important to bear in mind every year has its blemishes. And while it's important not to take away from how impactful these negatives and these cons are, I think it's also important to look at what good happened this year and realize just how monumental of a year 2023 really was. As is the case for most of the time in regards to the gaming subject, what about the games? Because the games on the whole this year have been phenomenal. Sure, there's been a few misses, but look at this list. Baldur's Gate 3, Armored Core 6, Final Fantasy 16, The Legend of Zelda, Tears of the Kingdom, Super Mario Wonder, Spider-Man 2, Xenoblade 3 Future Redeemed, I know it's a DLC, shut up. Sonic Frontiers DLC, same thing. Resident Evil 4, Honkai Star Rail, Alan Wake 2, Hi-Fi Rush. The list keeps going. There's been a lot of amazing games that came out this year, consistently. The year wasn't front-loaded or back-loaded, they came out consistently, across multiple different genres and styles of game. And to me, that is really cool to see. And most of the games that I just listed were reasonably successful to my information. And all those games that I listed, again, to my information, weren't anti-consumer in terms of their business practices. They were full releases that released in pretty damn good states that were complete experiences from beginning, middle, and end. The Dead Space remake as well, I forgot about that one. There's been so many amazing games that came out this year, and especially in recent years with the tidal wave of monetization and predatory monetization at that has infested the video games industry like a virus. The fact that we can have years like this, where so many high-quality releases come out to acclaim after acclaim, without the need for shoving this monetization and these microtransactions down our throats, and that these games can be as successful as they ended up being, I think on the whole that is a reason to be optimistic for the future of gaming. Within reason, of course, but I think it's a damn good reason to be optimistic. Look at the success of Baldur's Gate 3 and how big and massive that game was. And the game came out at $60. No store, no microtransactions, nothing like that. There was a digital edition, a deluxe edition if you will. That was it. You had massive gaming comebacks as well. Cyberpunk 2077's makeover with Phantom Liberty being the highlight, and a game that for a long time coming now, people will look back as one of the best gaming comebacks in history. What CD Projekt Red promised in regards to Cyberpunk 2077 was a lot, and the game did not come out in a state that reflected all of those promises. It was a disastrous launch, poor performance, underdeveloped, and lackluster systems and mechanics, but the world was cool. And people obviously loved Cyberpunk's world, and they wanted it to be good, and so did CD Projekt Red, who had one of their first major pitfalls as a company, who were once extremely well respected with the Witcher series. They came under massive scrutiny with Cyberpunk, and then over the course of a couple of years of updating the game after update after update after update, it all culminated in this year with Phantom Liberty and monumental and systemic overhauls to many, if not every, facet and mechanic of the game. Cyberpunk 2077 went from one of the biggest gaming disasters to now, in my opinion, one of the best open-world games in history. It's a phenomenal experience and a game that can grip you tight and refuse to let you go as you become fully immersed in the world of Night City. It is one of the best locations I've ever seen in a game, with fun customization, progression, and quest design. It's a great game now. And yeah, I think it's fair to say that Cyberpunk 2077 should never have released in the state that it was. 100%. And no matter the improvement, nothing will excuse them. But instead of abandoning it, they made it better. And I don't want that to be a trend where a game releases half-assed and shoddy to just be made what it should have been on launch later on, but Cyberpunk 2077, as an exception, is a win in my book. Now, I don't think Halo Infinite is to the point where I think it should be, but it's in a far better position where it was on launch at least. And 343 have really been on the grindstone, trying to add content and enable and further player agency and customization and creation to synergize with the launch cycles of Halo Infinite. The game is in a far better state than it ever has been before. And while I don't think it's good enough yet, it's trending in the right direction. Activision Blizzard King was one of the biggest gaming companies in the entire industry, and Microsoft acquiring them was one of the focal points of this year. It was, if not almost certainly was, the biggest gaming story of this year, was Microsoft desperately trying to acquire Activision Blizzard King and ended up being successful in that endeavor. I imagine we'll start to see a lot of the fruits of that labor in 2024, as a lot of Activision Blizzard games start to come online to things like Game Pass. But this is the year where that deal got done, and how that affects the console wars going forward, and how that affects Xbox's and Microsoft's place in the industry going forward, we will have to wait and see. But a highly polarizing figure in Activision is now out of the door with Bobby Kotick. I don't think it's fair to put all the blame on every decision that Activision and Blizzard games have made in recent years on Bobby Kotick solely, but the buck stops with him, and now he's out the door. So what will the direction of Activision Blizzard games be like in the future? We will have to wait and see. There's a lot of question marks in regards to the future of Activision Blizzard and their, I would say partnership, but they were just acquired outright by Microsoft, and how that shapes the company as a whole for Microsoft. We'll have to wait and see. So I'm not generally one for corporate mergers, but maybe there's a silver lining here somewhere down the line. We just have to wait and see. I don't want to chalk this up as either a victory for the consumer or an L right now. It's just a question mark and something to keep an eye out for, because this is easily one of, if not the most pivotal decision and moment of the entire year in regards to the games industry. But I think one of the best directions the industry has gone in as a whole, and one of the best conversations that have sprouted up in recent months and throughout this year, is the conversation and hype for games without predatory and excessive monetization. Over the last decade or so, many games have gone the way of cutting out and removing pieces of content to be sold back to you, the player, piecemeal in terms of microtransactions or whatever. Games and systems and entire genres and sectors of the gaming industry have been irrevocably infested with the plague that is monetization, ripping out what used to be core experiences so they can be sold back to you piecemeal and offered up on the altar of the almighty dollar. And people have pushed back against this trend in the games industry for a while, but enough people were willing to spend enough money to reward companies and to continue to incentivize companies to continue down this path. And while I don't think that has changed wholeheartedly, I think a conversation and an appreciation for games that do not go by those trends has really culminated in the last couple of years. Last year in regards to Elden Ring and God of War, this year in regards to games like Baldur's Gate 3, The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, Spider-Man 2, Armored Core 6, etc., etc. Let alone the games that Nintendo puts out consistently. Let alone all the other games that came out this year that didn't feel the need or even inkling to include all this excessive monetization. A lot of games and successful games, and the games that received the most notoriety this year, largely are those without this predatory excessive monetization. Baldur's Gate 3 kind of leading the charge in this regard, showing that games that still have a heart and soul can succeed, where we don't have to make excuses or, yeah, but it's not that bad. We don't need to make statements like that in regards to many games this year. We don't have to excuse bad business practice or anti-consumer policy for a lot of the games that came out this year. For some of them, sure, some people will, but for a lot of the big heavy hitters this year, that argument did not even need to be waged. You bought the game, it was a full, complete experience from beginning, middle, and end. And it's not like these games haven't existed in the last few years or so, obviously, but we've had so many games that came out this year that just didn't feel the need to screw us over. Where I could play the game, I could watch the game, I could learn about the game, and not feel like that game exists solely to confuse me or to screw with me in trying to siphon off as much money from me as humanly possible. We've had creativity, we've had imagination, we've had player agency this year. Rich, fulfilling experiences, wonderful stories, and amazing gameplay loops. And I think we can all look back on 2023 and say, in terms of game releases at least, it is easily one of the best years we've had in recent times. For me, I think it is the best year we've had since 2017. It's been a phenomenal year with games that'll be in people's backlogs for years to come. Games that we'll all look back on with fond memories. And that's a cool thing. We have been inundated this year with amazing game releases. And next time, we will look ahead to 2024, because 2024 seems like it's going to be a pretty damn good year as well. So with that, I will call it there for the day. Thank you all for tuning in. My pleasure for making the video. If you enjoyed it, please leave a like and subscribe. It really helps the channel out and helps support future content, and I greatly appreciate it. Leave a comment down below with your favorite game you've played this year, and let me know your favorite memory from it. I'd love to hear your thoughts and hear your opinions, to hear your stories. Let's look back on this year and think about the good times, because every now and then, it's easy to get hung up on the bad. but it's also important to remember the good. And with that, I'll call the video there for the day. Thank you all for tuning in, my pleasure for making the video. Stay safe, have a great day, make sure to leave a like and subscribe, and I'll see you all next time. Bye bye everybody, until we meet again.